So we're over a third of the way into May. I don't know how everyone else is doing, but here we still have lockdown going. Let's keep the hair in the shot because the bed head is looking pretty good. Um, yeah, so I thought I'd do a wrap up and kind of explain the TBR because I think it's going to take a lot longer. So I have my Goodreads here because I forget usually what I've read, and I'm not going to read the review for all of them, but just a quick once over. So the first one was Val McDermid's Darker Domain. It's the second in a series that's like called the Karen Piri series, and I know that Karen has become something of a slur, but these are quite fun. I didn't know it was the second in a series. I'm gonna probably try and find the other one. There's a weird guy outside. He looks like he's dressed as a stormtrooper. It's the second in the series. So unfortunately, the first one's ruined for me because they talk about the first book in this, but that's okay. I like Val's writing enough because I've read some of her work before, mostly like articles and think pieces, but this is great. It's a good bit of tart noir. It's unfortunately the only thing going for it is if you read a lot of noir or a lot of detective books, you can kind of figure out what's going to happen. And I figured out in a page 250-ish, and this is a 394 page book, where it was going. Like I figured out the twists, and I figured out who the red herrings were. There's a little bit of ambiguity at the end, which I really liked. Karen's really fun. She's a very nice, hard-hitting detective. She sounds like a lot of people I know, and she hasn't got what is common in at least YA fiction, where the heroine will be described as looking plain, but they're really an absolute smoke show. It's great. Karen I think she's like a 30s, late 30s, early 40s. She's described as like not overweight, but an average, healthy enough, but neurotic enough woman, middle-aged woman weight, where she I think she would describe herself as like plump, which is fine, and she enjoys just hanging out. She loves a drink now and then, loves a takeaway. She's so fully realised that it's great seeing her like pick apart a case because she's an incredibly good detective. I'd put Karen up against Sherlock Holmes any day because unlike Sherlock, who just kind of guesses shit and things happen to be correct, Karen uses this real thing called deductive reasoning. And also I'm a sap at heart, really, and there is a wonderful bit of romance in this that completely perfect. So for the first ever Karen Piri mystery, that's also set in Fife, so if anybody is from Fife, they'll pick up on a lot of slang, which went over my head, being a man of ethnic ambiguity. This is my first one. Strong 3 out of 5, which I think means slightly better than average. Good book, not like a great or a must read, but a cut above like most off the shelf trained thriller books. So next one, Henriette Lacks. Weirdly enough, the only video I've made which does okay. Like people still pop onto it. I don't have a lot of followers or anything, but people seem to actually enjoy it, and I'm quite proud of that. For more in depth, actually just go watch the Henriette Lacks video. But this is a wonderful biography of a woman that has impacted everyone's life. We don't know it unless you have any interest in medical history or biology, but this goes into a deep dive into the appropriation of black women's bodies, which now and again you get some interesting looks into, but by and large they're looked over. There's a really interesting phrase. It's called the less than dead, and it's when people who are died that are considered less than dead, they're unimportant, and unfortunately black women make up part of that evil grouping. Wonderful book. What did I give it? I think I gave it 4. Let's find out. The only No, yeah, I give it 4. I think the reasoning for 4 was it didn't go quite into enough on this, like the science behind it, like how HeLa cells are invasive, the cultivation of the cancer. I could have just preferred a little bit, but more of a deep dive. I also would have enjoyed Rebecca Skloot meeting Henrietta's descendants a bit more. Although there's a lot of that in that. Don't get me wrong. Just the what's her name? Yeah, Deborah is one of Henrietta's descendants that Rebecca Skloot spends the most time with, and she's a wonderful person. So this was wonderful. It's not a 5 because it's not quite in depth enough, but it's a 4. So I'd say it's a must read. What are we doing next? I have just a stack down here, and I pick them up at random. Nocturnal Animals. Nocturnal Animals. Oh, I've got a whole video on it. I'll link to that as well. This one was tough. Like, I finished it fairly quickly. I think the person that wrote it is more interesting than the book. I think the ambiguity of the book is more interesting than the book. If it was done as an experiment, it's wonderful. I don't think it was. I think it's just an off book. It also precursed the disgusting, and I say disgusting not in someone's replayed something, so I'm going to hear a ding in a minute. I say disgusting not in content, but in like cultural trend of train paperbacks, thrillers basically. This precursed the thriller genre in a big way. Before your girl with the giant tattoos, the girl on the train, multiple girls being murdered, this was here, and it's maybe got a little bit more going. It's got more going for it than a lot, but it's still not there. Austin Wright did, however, get a really great message where somebody said it was too literary for publication, and that's not the problem. It's interesting enough, but it's not interesting because it's good. It's interesting because of the history behind it. But a bummer. I wished it'd be really good. When did I finish this? I think I finished this technically this month. I did. Fuck it. It was the start of the month. Taken me ages to read this. Because I bought it way back in 2016, but then I moved abroad for quite a long time, and this just got left in an attic somewhere. I love Robert Chambers. I love the writing in this. What I don't love is that, so it's called The King in Yellow. The King in Yellow is a play within the book that drives you mad, and that's great weird fiction trope. And this is very gothic and very weird fiction. The go-to is to say it's Lovecraft-esque, but this was before Lovecraft. In fact, Lovecraft was influenced heavily by The King in Yellow. The characters in it are great short story characters. You very quickly learn everything you need about them, and then the maddening descent into the abyss happens. And it's great. The 4 ones that are based around The King in Yellow are, they can be quite spooky. They're kind of scary in a way. But after that, they delve into... It's good that you didn't stick to just doing the same thing over and over, but the rest of the shorts don't quite work. The last one is really good. It tries to do this interesting, really sweet romance thing when it was happening during like a war in Paris. The whole book is set in Paris, and it's got a real sense of space. So Robert Chambers must have loved the place because it's fully mapped out this dark gothic Paris. Because usually when you think of gothic cities, for me at least, the ones that come to mind are always London, because Edinburgh, actually. If you go to Edinburgh, it's really got a creepy sense in the old quarter. Florence in Italy has always spooked the hell out of me, and Prague's really good for goth. So I think I gave this like 3. Yeah, 3. It's a foundational work, but compared to some Lovecraft collections, some China Melville collections, and can I see it from over here? Vandermeer has got moments in Annihilation which trump a lot of Lovecraft work. So foundational, should be read, but on its own, no higher than a 3. Next one. This is Black Watch. It's a play. I don't particularly like plays. I don't like theatre that much. I'm actually adapting a really good book I love called The Black Spider, which is actually actually, weirdly enough, a weird fiction book. The first one, actually. I'm adapting that as a play. It's a bit too long though. I sent it to somebody who is like a professional actor, and they said it's far too much like a movie. There's a lot of jumping around. You need to have it so that you could set it in a stage quickly, because this would require a lot of scenario changes, and that's good. That's good feedback. I'd have to work on that. So I'm not a big play guy. I have actually bought this as a present for somebody, but lockdown happened. I was meant to give it to them in March. Because couldn't. We're still talking lockdown, and I hate buying books to them. Online. The thing is, it was kicking about particularly because Amazon is evil. Jeff Bezos is a monster. He will one day be a tyrant king.
Bias has came in.
Yeah, I only gave it 3. I can't use. I gave it 3 because I can't use. There are parts of it which are really quite good. I love the writing. Instead, the characters scrounging all speak, or I'm rereading stuff, which is fine for me because I got late in life, and they all have things. So the 2 traumas or histories that I get, but it's my beat to hell copy. There's just something missing from me. I think this copy of Middlemarch is so play, but I've still got the receipt from it. It's become like a must-read for me, and just because I don't like the detail that's faded from it, doesn't speak to me. Even though I like whenever I read it for uni, play, I just think, why couldn't this? I didn't manage to read it all. Like, I like The Tempest. It's a massive book, The Tempest. And it's not massive in the way that. So 3 massive books, good writing. The one that's it is good. It's just, but then you see it in all the text is like that big. What else? This is a book. This is like a proper piece. I think my only 5-star literature. This isn't a quick read. That's what I noticed when I was going through the. It's gorgeous. The vicious. I can't even like properly describe it. Text. The font is big. Legends. Like older classics are. I can't. They're small. It's Superman. Your word count. Your page count basic. Is only impressive if it's just Lois Lane on the moon. That's good work. And even though I'm as a fully fleshed out 5 pages in, I love that. 5 stars. I'm absolutely really enjoying that. A lot of comics, like George Eliot, I think it's one of the trappings of their reading. It's one of the foundational canon works, which is so wholesome. Going to be a big deal for me. So All Stars in it's one of the foundational canon works of Western literature. It's smaller in scale. There's no magic. There's no fucking dragons. It's just about this little town called Middlemarch in England, and you're just following their life. And I don't know, I think the older they get you, the more you appreciate smaller stories, or at least you should have started to appreciate smaller stories. And this is a good one. This is going to take me a while though, because it's big, and also a lot of my time is taken up by my own writing, but also my other favourite book. In fact, until I'd read Blood Meridian or Driven, this was on its own as like the best book I've read. Moby Dick. Not my copy. I've been over this in my Moby Dick playlist, but stolen from someone I miss very much. I'm reading a chapter of this every single day. If I don't, I make up for it by reading X amount of chapters for the whatever. And it's great. It's actually quite a good way of getting through a big book like this, is to think to yourself 1 chapter a day. Because Moby Dick's chapters are fairly small. But again, like Middlemarch, the text is quite small. So the detail and the content is actually heavy, but doesn't seem it. And with this bite-sized content, it's going to take me a little over about 4 months to read this whole thing, if we're going out a chapter a day, because it's got 135 pages. And I'm enjoying it. I love this. At the end of every single read, I go over what happened in the chapter, depending on what I'm feeling. If the sun's really good, it's not today, it's horrible and cloudy. I just kind of whatever, and just briefly go over and bomb at the door, because I want to enjoy it, despite the fate of quarantine. I want to go outside. But when you're reading Moby Dick, you really get that this is literature. This isn't just reading. There's something in this. It's more than just characters. It's more than just plot. It's just trying to say something, and that's why it stayed relevant compared to, like, I know it'll sound like I'm ragging on popular books, but Harry Potter is a cultural phenomenon. It's not a literary phenomenon. This is a literary phenomenon, and that's why it'll stay as relevant. It's why it's in a canon, and Harry Potter won't be. It's a culturally important book, but it's not actually a good book. This is a wonderful foundational book that there's a reason it gets taught, and there's a reason it still gets spoken about. And it's a little bit disheartening that classics like these are rated less high than Hunger Games, which is a shame. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna read. It'll probably change. I'll pick up stuff now and then. Like I said before, I read a book in a night that I really didn't mean to, because I just found it. Because I also found the Book of Mormon, and I might at some point try and tackle that, but it's heavy. So yeah, join me every day for a Moby Dick, and I will see what will be coming next. I still have to do the vicious thing. I might start talking about. I might discuss tropes because they're interesting to talk about, and I see that there's a little cottage industry of it. So have a look at the Goodreads. Had a look at the hub pages. It's still coming out, and that'll be me. Goodbye. Also, I forgot in that pile. I read a book called Flatshare, which I found in my flat. I think it's my flatmate's, and I was reading it as a goof, and then slowly just finished the whole thing in one night. And I'm just going to read my Goodreads review because I'm really quite proud of that Goodreads review because it's manic. Here we are. Okay, so the first girl I ever fancied was called Tiffany. Not all that relevant outside of the main character's name, but it struck me while reading this. By the way, this is very short, and it is annoyingly very sweet. Flatshare is direct to the vein of full-blown diabetes. It is so sugary and wholesome, you will lose a leg. When you open it, soft ukulele music plays. It smells of lavender and washed sheets. It has a whole vision board on how its 2-year plan is going. It takes time out of its day to look at furnishings, RuPaul, Mumsnet, Etsy, and is definitely planning to take up a gardening. It has an interest in getting just the perfect instant photo. It has plans to go on holiday in Tuscany. It likes a pink gin and fizz and share. It giggles at stag do's and will happily wear a sash at any opportunity. It unironically loves Christmas, and it is just so happy that it's your birthday. Flatshare is harmless, but not good. It decides to have a go at tackling domestic abuse with a focus on gaslighting, but by page 245 you know what's going to happen next. Its characters are so nice, their flaws are adorable, their jobs are professional, they work and they have coffee, they chat and they cry. Flatshare is a parasite that loves any little bit of news about Beyonce, but outside of the singles has never actually listened all the way through a Destiny Child album. It saves the date. It RSVPs. It loves Gatsby-themed parties and organises people by equating them with the cast of Friends. Flatshare will sap you of all life force because it must grow powerful. Flatshare scared the hell out of me. I can't go into what Flatshare is about. It's so inane, and it's definitely going to take everyone by storm. It came out last year. It follows roughly these two people that share a bed in a flat in London. One's called Tiffy. She's a manic pixie dream girl, but they try and twist it by being like, oh, that's not great. But it is great. She's a delight to be around. And Leon, who's a nurse, and is trying to overturn his brother's wrongful conviction. Flatshare is dark. Flatshare is a monster secretly, because it's where the easy pick up and go chick lit is. It doesn't look at like the real grime of relationships. It sees them as a live, laugh, love thing, and that's secretly the most insidious thing on the planet. Be careful of Flatshare.